you approach this first segment? I mean, it's crazy. We go from a super speedway to a road course to the short track. Do you have to think about the whole three, or do you just go into that first race in Atlanta?
I personally, I try to focus on one race at a time to be able to put all the energy and focus into that one race. It's hard to not to think a little bit of Watkins Glen and Bristol, but the reality is that you have to take one step at a time. Put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward.
Your team, I mean, you and that whole track house, they're good at the road course, so you kind of look a little toward Watkins Glen, correct? And excited about going there?
Yeah, definitely very excited. Very excited to go to Watkins Glen. We had the opportunity to do the tire test there, so maybe we have a little bit of a headwind there. It's a different tire that we're going with, that Goodyear pick, so it's going to be interesting.
How do you balance the urge to race up front, if possible, or protect points in any given race?
You have to compete, man. You have to be on offense. If you're going to be in defense, you're not going to make it very far. You have to be on offense. You have to attack, and hopefully things work out for you.
Excited? Just in terms of nervous, kind of the big picture of approaching this playoff season now you work all season to get to this point specifically. As a competitor, what's going through your mind? What's the mentality knowing you got 15 other guys, you guys are all competing, race in, race out to get that?
I love it, man. This is what we are. I mean, really, all of us, we are born for this. We love these scenarios of pressure. You have to compete. You have to execute. You have to perform. We love that, and we're just very blessed to be doing this in front of all of you guys.
The first leg of the playoffs is crazy to me. I mean, you look at Atlanta, Watkins Glen to Bristol, three completely different tracks. What's the mindset? Do you look at Atlanta, or do you still have to look at this craziness of the first three?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a dynamic, really, first two rounds if you look at it. So, but that's our schedule. I mean, if you look at our schedule, week to week, the race fans get to see something completely different, a completely different on-track product. And the playoffs, honestly, if you haven't been watching NASCAR racing all year, you might be a little confused because we do such different types of racing every week. So the drafting style of Atlanta, and then obviously road course racing, followed up by a short track oval. There's a lot going on, but that's kind of how our whole season works.
As a veteran, quote unquote, of the playoffs now, what have you learned since the first time you've been out? And maybe has your driving style changed any? What have you learned in your time being in the playoffs?
There's certainly been an evolution, right? Learning the car and trying to learn the series and my competitors. And I feel like, maybe I probably understand the guys that I'm racing better than I did in my rookie year. As far as what to expect, and they kind of know more what to expect from me, maybe more comfortable racing around me, or maybe less comfortable, who knows. But otherwise, I think stage points are a luxury. I think that's really what differentiates the Cup Series playoffs versus the other national series, is that there are so many good drivers and teams still left in the field. Obviously maybe not racing for playoffs, but for the top 10 to be occupied by all non-playoff cars is totally not out of the question. So your ability to go get those, I could easily double my gap to the cut line just by finishing 8th in a stage, which you think about a year's worth of work is equal to finishing 8th or 9th in a stage is pretty wild to think of. But from a number standpoint, you just have to be on it, and that ramps up the more the playoffs go.
As you transition into the playoffs or the regular season, how do you balance the idea of pushing really hard and trying to get to the front versus protecting what points your car will get to?
Yeah, I think that's just it. I think it's no different than any other race is identifying where you're at for that day and maximizing. And I feel like regardless of your performance, being able to maximize and eliminate mistakes and put together races, I think that's what defines the first two rounds of the playoffs, just because there are so much unpredictability with the races and the tracks that we are going to. It's really about the drivers and teams that don't make those mistakes early in the playoffs. And I think that round of 8, that's where you find that next gear. That's where you have to push yourself. That's where you have to take risks to try and win races, because I think that's the only way you realistically think you'll be in the championship for.
We've been hearing from drivers for years. Even though it's the playoffs, treat it like the championship. Don't really put too much into it. I'm just curious, as a competitor, is there a mental switch that flips or anything that kind of internally changes, knowing that stakes are not higher and you're starting first?
Well, the people in which I care about or I'm competing with definitely reduces, right? If I need a position from a guy that's in the playoffs versus a guy that's not in the playoffs, I'm going to race that guy differently. So what you focus on is definitely different. Is from a competitor standpoint. I can't undervalue how social, racing another driver in NASCAR is in the type of racing that we have. It's so different than any other type of motorsport because it is that social, because we do spend so much time making decisions based off of the individual in the car, because we learn each other and learn how we race so much more throughout the year. So I think that definitely changes the game from that standpoint. But how my job changes, other than that specific type of decision making, my job is definitely still the same. Make the thing go as fast as it can go.
You got to go to Atlanta, but are you still thinking Watkins and you have to kind of prepare for all three?
Oh yeah, it's definitely kind of a funky round. 2 races with Atlanta and the Glen being new playoff races, leading with the Speedway like Atlanta. You never know. You don't know what's going to happen, really. So, but hey, everyone's in the same boat. Like, it's not just funky for us. It's that way for everybody. So, how do you and your group outperform other people, right? So, can you rise to the occasion? Can you not make mistakes? Can you execute really well? So I think that's the challenge that we try to make it is, hey, can you outperform everybody? Can you be better than the 15 other folks you're racing with? So no matter what round it is.
Since you've been in the playoffs, how has your mentality changed from the very first time you were in it? How have you grown as a driver, maybe being a part of the playoffs from when you first did it till now?
Yeah, I was 2017 was my first one with the Wood Brothers, and your first one you're pretty nervous, right? I mean, you're a young kid and you're excited, to be part of them, but you're also nervous. You're like, oh my gosh, everyone's watching me. I have to perform really well. I have to prove that we deserve to be here as a team, and it can be overwhelming, that's for sure. And as you kind of get more experience, I've always experience is kind of king in this stuff. It's just it makes you more relaxed. You kind of understand what you're doing, or you think you have a better understanding of what you're doing. So if I could talk to my younger self, it's just calm down, just relax, and just go do what you do that got you here. Go be the driver that you can be the leader you think you can be, and your team the same way. So it definitely calms down as you get, whether that's experience or just getting older, you just calm down as an individual. But it's I'll never forget my first one. It was nerve-wracking, that's for sure.
Ryan, how do you balance going into the playoffs the aggressive nature that you want to be up front, you want to take everything your car has, balance that with preserving yourself, preserving the things you can get?
In any race, or in Atlanta? Oh, the playoffs? We've kind of had the mentality as a 12 group of, we've always been on the aggressive side, with calls, how we approach things. We always want to be on the offensive. I feel like that's kind of the best way to be. But at the same time, being smart about it, not just being dumb and just throwing Hail Marys all day long. So it's a balancing act of how do you want to do that? You obviously don't want to be any team that kind of shies away from an opportunity. But like I said, you just don't want to be a dart without feathers. So I feel like you have to be smart in certain situations, like Atlanta, Speedway race. I'd like to control that race. Those Speedway races, I'm most comfortable when I'm leading the pack and I'm kind of controlling the flow of the race, and I'm the one making the moves up front. I feel much more comfortable doing that than I am running 15th, 20th, and riding around. There's no riding around anymore. There's a wreck that can happen anywhere. So just be where you are the most comfortable. And for us, that's the front, and that's trying to control things. And that's how you. And then if you're up there, you're going to get your points and have a shot to win the race. So, we've always just tried to be in control. Don't try to play catch up.
Talking about your maturity, kind of as you've gone through playoffs in years past. I'm just curious, as a competitor, how much do you relish just this time of year being back in the playoff, having the opportunity to be in these high-stakes races with 15 other guys trying to fight for a championship?
Well, that's what you want, right? It's why you do it. It's why you race, to be in those spots. And how do you perform as a person, and how do you perform as a team as well? I love being in these positions. I mean, this is why any player plays the game. This is why any driver races. So I love these spots that we're in. I love, can you be the best that you can be in these high pressure situations? I love that feeling. And you just hope to do it better than everybody else. So, yeah, thanks.
Cool. You just got to go to Atlanta, focus on Atlanta, or as a team, are you thinking outside, over the next 3 races?
You have to focus on every week and kind of deal with things as they come. So Atlanta, obviously we want to avoid the mess, but we can only focus on what we can control. I think if you try to focus too much on things outside of your control, it's never good. So we'll go to Atlanta, see what happens, and move on from there.
You've been in the playoffs before. If you go back and look at the first year you were in it till now, what have you learned? Like, how have you maybe grown as a driver being a part of this process? Yeah,
a lot's changed for sure. I think the sport has gotten tremendously more difficult in the last couple of years. So, things have changed, but at the same time, definitely been here a few times. So excited for the next 10 weeks, and I think that experience can help.
Alex, how do you balance, as you go into the playoffs, how do you balance the aggressiveness, trying to be up front, trying to get as much as you can, versus preserving, what points the car or the situations?
I don't think there's really ever preserving anymore in the Cup Series, right? Like, we're all super aggressive all the time. So be aggressive, try to put yourself in the right position, and go from there.
As a competitor, is there any switch that flips mentally, just kind of going from regular season to the playoffs, knowing that the stakes are higher and you've got 15 other guys really out of the whole field you're competing with?
I don't think so. I think the sport's gotten so tough and the field has gotten so tough that you have to be really switched on at all times. So, I think business as usual, and we're kind of switched on every week.
I was asking Kyle earlier about just kind of the big picture of this season. It feels like a lot of different events have helped grow the sport and helped broaden the audience a little bit. From the double to some of the extracurriculars, Wilkesboro, Richmond, things like that. Just from your vantage point, how do you feel like the sport is growing this year?
Yeah, obviously the sport has continued to grow in a lot of different ways. So been super cool. Obviously watching Kyle this year's been a lot of fun. He's done some really cool stuff. It's cool to see all the new places we're going and kind of everything we're doing. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.